Let's do it.
All right. You look pretty bundled up down there tonight.
Yeah, it's cold. It's very cold down here.
A little nippy down in that basement, is it?
Yeah. I'm actually going to put my hood up. It's too cold.
Looking stealthy.
Oh, that's better. That'll trap the warmth.
What is it, like 40 degrees down there or something?
I don't know, dude. I probably should put some pants on.
You're all dressed up top, but shorts on the bottom.
Yeah.
Or do you have no pants? I can't tell. The world will never know. It's a party
down below.
The world will never know because I just see you from the top up.
I'm gonna keep the listeners guessing.
Hi, I'm Nick.
And I'm Josh.
And this is the PUDs Podcast. Oh, man. How are you doing tonight, Joshua?
I'm good. Hello, Nick. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you. Thank you very much.
That's good. Yeah. I care about your well-being.
Yeah, I care about you too. Are you sure you're warm enough down there?
I think so.
You get your little space heater. I think it's snowing in the background.
Yeah. That's something.
So,
let's not talk about it anymore. So if I start turning blue, then
and if you become
just know I'm gonna have to step away.
But if you're shivering uncontrollably, that's still okay, I'm assuming.
Yeah. Hopefully it won't pick up on the mic. The teeth chattering.
Yeah, the old school cartoon sound of teeth chattering. That'd be cool. All right, man. So we've been talking about it on the last episode, but I've been out doing quite a bit of hiking since shortly before the winter began. I know we kind of touched upon a few, but been busy out there, so figure we have a little spudsy spud and kind of just go over it.
Before we do that, can I ask you something?
Sure.
How late into the new year is it acceptable to say Happy New Year?
I feel like that unwinds pretty quickly. I feel like within probably a couple days or maybe a week.
What do you get? Yeah, a week.
No, we just said. I think we said Happy New Year in our last episode or something like that. I think we said Happy 2024, but it was our first episode of 2024, so I think that's appropriate, even though it's several weeks after New Year's.
But if you're just walking by, you're making say you're making a transaction at a convenience store, and today, and somebody wishes you a Happy New Year, is that acceptable? Are you accepting that Happy New Year?
I mean, no, I'd feel like I'd just say okay or something. I don't know if I'd immediately be like Happy New Year. I'd be like, all right,
thanks,
cool, thank you. I don't think I'd be
bye.
If it was New Year's Day or even that week, I'd be like, oh, Happy New Year. You know what I mean? But I feel like by this point it's sort of expired.
Yeah.
It's very stale.
Can we agree that it's a 1 week cutoff? You got 1 week to wish it a Happy New Year.
I think that's good too.
Yeah,
I think that's good. That's just making me think on that topic as we're getting a little off, but it's okay. It's still relevant to the new year, and it's a spud, so we can do whatever we want. But all the people that are like, oh, it's so hard to get used to writing 2024 or typing 2024. It's I feel like that's a week long thing too. After that, just gotta get used to it. It's the new year.
Yeah, just recognize
it. Yeah, just grow up. Just grow up. Stop complaining. But I had someone say that to me yesterday, and I'm like, it's been 2024 for a while at this point. I don't know. Maybe I just have a job and I date stuff for the podcast and things like that meticulously too, to know where we are and when we recorded. So maybe that's why I just kind of am more conscious of it. But yeah, it's kind of funny sometimes.
Yeah, we're almost a month into 2024 though. If you write dates every day, you should be able to switch that part of your brain over pretty quickly.
You'd think.
We can't let the machines beat us.
That's what this all comes down to.
Yeah, that's basically it. All right, I'm sorry for getting you off track.
No, it's fine.
You're doing
great.
Good. You're doing great.
It's all good. Yeah, so as you mentioned, after the baby shower / Christmas party, I kind of kicked off. It technically wasn't calendar winter yet, so part of hiking the winter 4,000 footers in New Hampshire, Part of that whole deal is technically by the rules that the AMC lays down. It's literally to the minute of the beginning of the winter solstice and to the minute of the end of the winter solstice, or the vernal equinox, I should say, really when spring begins. So technically your hikes have to start and end in that span. And that also means like literally from when you start, like you can't have a crossover hike. Like theoretically, if you started hiking at 10 p.m. and like the solstice was at 12 a.m. and you finished at 2 a.m. or something like that wouldn't count. For example, right. It has to entirely fall in winter. So I did get out first, and I'm kind of classifying this as a pseudo winter hike because I actually used snowshoes, and this was before New Hampshire and New England got that crazy rainstorm that we got, like, was it like right around Christmas or a little after Christmas? I forget.
Yeah. But
it just wiped out all the snow, caused a ton of flooding, like historic level flooding, I think in New Hampshire, and I know like I believe the Saco River like washed out part of 302 and some crazy stuff happened, but there was actually a bunch of snow up there. This was around December, probably like 15th or something like that. I forget exactly when the party was. I actually didn't write down the date for this one, but it was a couple weeks before Christmas, and got up to do Tomfield Willey. And another extension of the list is actually hiking all the 48 and the Four Seasons. So I kind of was thinking of finishing up my 52 with the view list, or I guess knocking off another peak of that, but I'm going to save that for the spring. I have Eagle Crag, Eastman, and the Bald Faces left, so I just have 4 that could really be 1 or 2 hikes. But it's such a ride from my house that I just kind of didn't really feel like driving there, so I kind of was looking at what I could use for the fall. And it was a shitty day, frankly, weather-wise, and it was supposed to snow and just be sort of crappy, so I decided to do Tomfield Willey for the fall. So
I guess I have a quick question. And I'm going to have a lot of questions for you tonight,
yeah,
like as a somebody who's not experiencing this, and maybe for people that want to know more about hiking, or especially hiking during the winter. But I know on a previous episode you explained how these lists in New Hampshire were kind of a gamification of basically a motivator to try to get people to go out and hike these different peaks and things like that. And they created these different lists, and this one's specific to winter, I guess. But I guess my question is, like, besides the list, like, why even hike in winter? What is it that you enjoy about hiking during the winter time? Or do you not enjoy it and you just do it?
I definitely enjoy it. I wouldn't be out there if I didn't enjoy it.
You can't say because you like hiking. You can't say that. That's,
I'll try to give more detail than that. And I mean, you definitely could have caught me saying probably like 5 or 6 years ago, or at least when we finished the original 48, like I don't think I'd want to hike them all in the winter, but I think like with anything, you end up chipping away at it. And it's such a learning process too with the clothing and all that. But I guess one of the biggest reasons I do like hiking during the winter is there's a little bit more solitude. The mountains change. Sometimes the trails become easier. Sometimes they become more difficult with road walks and other just logistical challenges. A lot of times the views are also just frankly more outstanding because of the cold, dry air. So a lot of times you have a lot better visibility than you would have any other time of the year. You can just see a lot further. Wintry mountains are really nice to look at.
That's true.
I don't know.
That is very true.
Yeah, those are probably a few that come to the top of mind.
Yeah. So you're saying like a trail that you would have hiked, say, in the summer or spring can be almost completely different during the wintertime? Like,
yeah, for sure.
Okay. That's
yeah,
cool.
I mean, one example, like we're to take it back to sort of Tomfield Willey, but Mount Tom that lies in that range, which kind of makes up, if you don't know where it is and you haven't hiked that before, it's sort of the western side of Crawford Notch. Mount Willard actually splits off the same kind of trailhead. A lot of people probably know Mount Willard. I know you've been up there too, Josh.
Yeah. Yeah.
But basically it's that range back there. But Mount Tom, me and Ash had actually done it in the winter a couple years ago. And an example of how that changes is like, number one, you generally need snowshoes in that range. The trails become nicely packed. And a lot of times just the trail itself, if it's packed with snow, is a lot easier to deal with rather than roots and rocks. A lot of times river crossings are completely frozen over, so you don't have to worry about rock hopping or doing anything like that. And then Mount Tom, if it has enough snowpack, and I kind of thought this was BS when I read it in the guide, but we actually were up there in February a few years ago, and there was enough snowpack that a normally viewless peak, like it's completely wooded, except for a couple little views here and there. In the summer and other seasons, it was actually almost completely above tree line. So we had so much snow that we were up to the tops of the trees were at like our waists. and it actually had an incredible view of the presidential range, which was pretty wild, pretty stark contrast.
That's pretty cool.
I remember showing people some pictures, and they're like, "Oh, where'd you get that great view of like Washington and stuff?" And I was like, "It was actually from Mount Tom." But I don't know how many feet of snow there were. This was February of, I think, 21. I think that was before we actually met you guys in Waterville Valley, and we hung out for the weekend.
Nice.
But yeah, so that's one example of how they can change.
So what's your favorite season to hike?
I don't know. I'd probably go with like late summer, early fall, or fall. To be honest, I think if you get like a nice day in September, like that's like almost like perfect. Like just when the leaves are starting to change and it's like 60s and dry and cool, and then on the mountaintops it might be in the 40s or 50s. Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense.
I mean, I like winter too a lot. The worst time of year most people to hike would probably be shoulder season, sort of going from winter into spring. Like the April time span is like notoriously difficult to hike in because things are melting down low and there's still a lot of snow up top, and it can make for some really challenging conditions.
I would imagine that's when everybody's like got cabin fever and wants to get out too.
Yeah, because it's like you're starting to feel those first warm days of spring. And I mean, there's other places to hike in New Hampshire where you can not deal with winter for as long, but generally you're looking at winter conditions in the White Mountains until mid-April, if not even mid-May sometimes, depending where you are, at least.
It's cold in them hills.
Yes, it is. Yeah, man. So I set out to do Tom Field Willey. I still needed it for my fall season list, and I figured it was going to be kind of a crappy day, so why try to go for something with outstanding views. Field and Willey both have kind of views on them, but it was a good way to kick off sort of the winter season. I had my snowshoes on my pack, but they get a free ride, and glad I didn't bring my camera or anything because it was completely clouded and fogged and actually snowing most of the time I was up there. So that it was a very much just kind of get it done day. I made really good time because the trails, again, like I was saying, all the trails changed, but the trails were super packed with snow, and I just had Hill Sound Trail crampons on, basically like micro spikes, and I was able to move pretty quickly across the range and then back down. Skipped doing Mount Avalon on the way down, which is a 52 with a view peak, along with Mount Willard, because there were no views. So I'm like, and I've been up it like 3 or 4 times before, so I think it was like my 4th or 5th time doing Tom Field Willey too, so I've done that hike quite a few times.
Yeah. How's that hike rate? Is that a tougher hike?
So the stats on that one are 10 miles and 3,500 feet of elevation gain. Now it's funny, every time I've done it with a watch, which my Apple Watches are usually pretty accurate with elevation gain. I know they're not perfect. I know there's people who are going to probably argue about that, but my experience with them, they're almost spot on with what the guides usually have. And I've gotten like more like 4,000 feet every time I've done Tom Field Willey, and I've done it like 4 or 5 times at this point. So I don't know what's up with the guide numbers, but it's a challenging hike. It's not terribly difficult. I mean, I usually choose to go up Mount Tom first and then over to Fields and out and back to Willey and then down from Fields. The Mount Avalon trail that goes up Field directly that I usually choose to go down is very steep, like notoriously steep. It's got one section that goes up really good and it's kind of washed out for a while. But I usually choose to go down that. So it's not like a ridiculous hike. I wouldn't say it's like the most challenging of the 48. And most people try to do all those 3 peaks at once. Some people will just do one or save Tom for by itself and do Field and Willey. But yeah. So that kind of concluded my fall season hiking. And shortly after that, literally on December 22nd, right before Christmas, friend of the podcast, Mike Trokey, was reaching out to me and was kind of looking to do some hikes the next week, but wasn't super satisfied with what the weather looked like. So he proposed that we take the Friday off before Christmas, which was December 22nd, and we do Franconia Ridge. And this is after all the snow melted and everything. So we weren't sure exactly what conditions were going to look like. It was a little interesting, but we ended up taking the day off. It was supposed to be really nice and cold, bluebird day. We had fantastic views. And we had a few challenges on the trail. Number one, the river crossing. Remember I was mentioning all the flooding and stuff like that, but the first river crossing that you do going up to Mount Haystack, up the Falling Waters Trail, it probably took us a good 30 minutes to find a way across it. So that was kind of interesting. Yeah,
it was that high.
Yeah, it was a lot higher than normal. And then from the rain that they had and the sort of sudden drop in temperatures, a bunch of the rocks were covered in ice and stuff. So we kind of immediately had to put our spikes on just so that we could kind of step on stuff going across the river. And it was kind of funny. We kept going upstream, and I was looking, and it kept looking better. Then I'd get to something, I'd be like, oh, we can't do it here. So we ended up crossing at the main spot. But it took a little thought process to figure out which way we wanted to go.
Yeah. So you've brought these things up a couple times throughout the podcast, and maybe for some of the listeners. So you brought up micro spikes, crampons, snowshoes. What's the difference between those, and what kind of conditions would you probably use those type of things in?
So micro spikes, the most common brands you're probably going to see people use are Catula and then Hillsound, and they're basically little spikes, for lack of a better word. They're literally
spikes.
Yeah, they're micro spikes. No, but they're like small, I think 1/4 inch or 3/8 inch, depending which ones you have, spikes that are affixed to rubber gaskets that basically wrap around your boots. So what that allows you to do is it allows you to get traction in ice and packed snow. So for a lot of conditions, like ideal conditions in the whites, or just I guess anywhere you're going to winter hike, micro spikes usually kind of are what you want to be wearing. It's the easiest thing to be able to wear for traction. I mean, obviously wearing your bare boots, they'll say bare boots, like just nothing, is probably the best case scenario, but usually not very realistic. So micro spikes are kind of... Yeah, I mean, micro spikes are kind of your first basic and main traction control that you have in the winter that you kind of use. And then a step up from those is there's sort of hybrid crampons and there's full mountaineering crampons. I have Catula K10s, which technically by the amount of points on them, there's 10 points, aren't full mountaineering crampons like, say, like people use to like do real alpine, like Everest, things like that.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a lot of other mountains than Everest, but just to get the point across. But my Catula K10s have longer spikes on them. They're a little bit more rigid to attach to your boots. Those are more like if you're encountering, like they'll call it like boilerplate ice, but like very hard ice that you need to really dig into. Maybe ice and snow mix. So they're kind of just micro spikes, but amped up like and kicked up another level.
They like same thing, wrap around your boot, or you have to like...
So the Catula K10s have like sort of a metal frame with two frame, like a elongated sort of piece of steel, and then two frames that are a lot harder that go to the bottom of your boots, and then they like strap on and fix on. Then they're meant to work with like hiking boots or like hard mountaineering boots, like plastic boots almost. I don't have to use those generally as much. I mean, it depends what you're doing. I will carry them depending on which hike, but bottom line, that's kind of like your next step up for micro spikes. And then snowshoes, and there's different types of snowshoes, but for the sake of this, we'll talk about the more hiking mountaineering types of snowshoes. But these types of snowshoes typically have crampons actually under your feet. And then a lot of times the snowshoes themselves, the rails will have like serrated edges on them to help dig into ice and snow. And snowshoes you're going to be wearing generally if there's a good snowpack, because what happens if you end up walking on a trail that's not ready and not packed enough to support body weight is you end up doing what they call post-holing, which is a huge topic in the hiking community from when people should wear snowshoes and shouldn't wear snowshoes. But post-holing is when you're actually breaking through the snow. And that can be anywhere from maybe knee deep to thigh deep to even like waist deep if you're in spruce traps or really loose powdery snow, which gets exhausting really quick. And it also makes a mess of the trail because a lot of times in the mountains, obviously it's snowing and freezing all the time. So those post holes might get filled over and people end up stepping in them when you don't see them, and you could twist an ankle or a hip or something worse, which definitely happens. Yeah, I mean, kind of. I mean, you hope not, but I mean, the idea with snowshoes is that it helps really pack the trail, and it all helps distribute your body weight so that you're not sinking in the snow as much. So like, for example, if it just snowed 2 feet on a trail, then you're going to be wearing your snowshoes. You're not going to be going out in micro spikes. Once that trail's
broken in and frozen over, you go with the micro spikes.
Exactly. And I mean, there's different regulations depending parks you go. I mean, I haven't been anywhere. I've been pretty exclusively in the Northeast, but the Adirondacks actually have a pretty hard rule that their rangers do enforce, because I've seen it firsthand, where if there's 8 inches of snowpack or more, you're supposed to be carrying snowshoes on you. And that's even if you're not using them. So, and a lot of that's designed to keep the trails better. Yeah, and it's for your safety ultimately. I mean, people complain about it and bitch about it. I carry my snowshoes generally unless I know that the trail is going to be packed for sure. In the winter, it's kind of best, I would say, if you haven't gotten into winter hiking, just accept that you're going to have to take your snowshoes probably a good amount of the time, depending on the season. Yeah, I mean, if they get, I'll call it, they get a free ride like the day I did Tom Field Willey, but it's better to have, if you think you're going to need them, it's better to have them on your bag.
Says the guy who never brings his snowshoes.
Just in the spring. Just in the spring. Just that time of Madison in May where I learned my lesson. And I post-holed for half a mile in waist-deep snow almost.
Yeah, terrible.
So, exhausting. But yeah. So, that's kind of the different scenarios for when you're going to use snowshoes versus micro spikes versus crampons.
Yeah, that's good. That's good info. You explained that really well.
Thanks. There's also ice axes, which I do carry one of those sometimes. I actually need to get a newer one, but that's generally made too for when you're descending things. You kind of use the spiky end, I forget what the formal term for it is, to actually drive into the snow or ice to kind of secure yourself and hold that as you're going down. I've only had to use that a handful of times in my hiking career so far, and I need to get a smaller one. So I'm by no means experienced with an ice axe.
Yeah.
I just know how to push it into the ground in the ice and hold on to it. Yeah. So yeah, we had to don our micro spikes right at the get-go going up Falling Waters. And Franconia Ridge, I mean, a lot of people, even people who aren't big hikes, know Franconia Ridge. I mean, it's probably one of the most popular hikes in the United States, I would have to guess, at this point. There's been issues with parking there, and it has all this popularity for a good reason. And I was kind of reminded because it literally had been 5 years since I had been on the ridge, or 4 years, and last time was with you guys. And It is it's an absolutely beautiful hike on the right day. Yeah, it was the year you guys got married, right? So
yeah, that was the last time you hiked it?
Yeah, 2017. Oh, wow. So it would have been over 5 years ago. It's the last time I did Franconia Ridge. Yeah, I kind of avoid it because of the crowd factor. It is a proverbial shit show up there. I think a lot of the year with just tons of hikers, and
you're a hiking hipster, that's why.
Yeah, I'm a hiking hipster.
You liked Franconia Ridge before it was cool.
It's true. It's true. No. But yeah, all joking aside, there's a reason it has that reputation, because it is a beautiful hike on the right day. I mean, you got to be cautious. People have passed away up there, unfortunately, some pretty recently, with Emily Sotelo last year and I believe one other person. It's definitely not a hike to take lightly. I mean, we went up there on a nice day and we still took like tons of extra clothing and all this stuff, and kind of got up there, and Falling Waters soon became a sheet of ice, which was fun. So we definitely needed our spikes. And we really didn't encounter much snow till maybe like 3,500 feet or so. And the first part of the hike, I mean, this whole hike encompasses Mount Lincoln and Mount Lafayette, which are two 4,000 footers, both above 5,000 feet in the whites. And most people kind of choose to do it, I want to say counterclockwise. Like, I'll do it and go up Falling Waters. I've heard the other perspective to go up Bridle Path. They're both steep trails. I opted to go up Falling Waters because, as the name suggests, Falling Waters has falling water on it. There's 3 pretty good sized waterfalls going down it. And I opted to rather go up by the falls instead of actually descend that on tired legs at the end of the day.
The falls are pretty early on, though, in the hike, no?
Yeah, they are. Yeah, within probably a mile. And then, like, after that, it's like, I'm sure you remember, that's like where it starts to like really go up. After you cross Cloudland Falls is probably the biggest one that everybody takes pictures of. And then you go up to the left of it and kind of cross over. And it has like 2 or 3 switchbacks, I want to say. And then it seemed like the trail cutters just decided that they were going to beeline up the mountain and up the ridge. It does not switch back anymore after that point.
I like it.
Yeah, so we got a pretty decent time up to Little Haystack, and we broke out, and it was like the strangest thing because we were in the snow and kind of ice in the woods, and like literally on Little Haystack there was barely any snow and ice. Like, it was almost down to the rock like everywhere, which was kind of crazy for December. And considering there had been a couple feet of snow, I think, up there earlier, even around like November. So that rain just wiped it all out.
That's wild.
And we were supposed to get like 40, 50 mile per hour winds, I want to say was forecast that day, maybe like 35. But we got up and there was barely any wind, like, at all. And just super clear views, super blue sky, a little bit of haze here and there, but just really unexpected conditions. We both kind of like looked at each other and like it was almost like ominous because we were just expecting to get blasted by the wind as soon as we broke tree line.
Yeah, it wasn't even super cold like around that time either.
It wasn't warm though. Like that day, I still think it was like single digits or something like that.
Oh wow.
Or maybe like 50, maybe in the teens, something like that.
Yeah.
But the wind chill wasn't that bad. It was cold by the time we got to Lafayette. So you go up Little Haystack and then you go across up to Lincoln, and then you actually go down and up to a little peak that some people call North Lincoln, some people call it Mount Truman. That sits between Lincoln and Lafayette, and then you go down and up to Lafayette. And it was kind of funny. Like a lot of people were telling us like, oh, it's windy on Lafayette, and we got to Lafayette and we're like, this isn't that bad. Like it was maybe blowing like 15 or 20 miles per hour winds. Like for the mountains up here, like it really was not bad.
They don't know nothing.
I mean, it was cold for sure. Like I had my hands out of my gloves for a little bit taking pictures, and like that didn't last long because my hands were freezing cold, yeah. Even though it was sunny. But we hung out in the old, I believe it's an old Summit House foundation that's up there from ways back. And we kind of had some lunch and chilled out and just took in the day. It was one of those, like, we didn't want to go down. Like, it was just really nice up there and getting out of the wind and eating some like food and hanging out and chatting with other people. It was nice.
Yeah. Was there a lot of other people? I would imagine probably not.
A decent amount. We probably crossed like, I don't know, 15 people or so going across the ridge, and then we probably saw another 15 or 20 coming up on the way down. Wow. So I think a lot of people are on it just because it was such a nice day, and it is still even that hike in the winter is like popular. So
that's awesome
because it's just right off the highway like that. Yeah, and the only eventful part I should say of the day, really or unexpectedly eventful part of the day was we were coming down Lafayette, and Mike Trokey was kind of coming down in front of me. And there's this area off like the northwest side of Lafayette that you cross on Greenleaf Trail that there must be a spring or something that seeps out of the rock. And there was basically just like what I was referring to as boilerplate ice in this one section. So he kind of tried to sort of shimmy down it, just like digging his spikes in, and he like slid out and then probably slid a good 20, 30, maybe like 20 yards. I'm probably exaggerating, but he slid a good amount down the trail on sheer ice and then like sort of just ended up in this little rocky sort of side ditch. So that was a little nerve-wracking to watch happen in front of me. Yeah, that was pretty wild. So he was all right, luckily. I mean, other than like a pretty good bruise on his leg where he kind of slammed into a rock, he was all right to go down.
There's nothing scarier than
yeah, it was
nothing scarier than being a grown man and not being able to be in control of your body.
No, and it was kind of crazy to watch because I saw him kind of scoot down to balance, and then I just saw him slide like, I don't know, like 15 feet or whatever, something like that. Like it was a pretty good ways. It was enough where I was like, this could be really bad. In that brief second, I was like, hopefully this isn't too bad. It was kind of what I was thinking initially, and it wasn't too bad, thankfully. And he handled it pretty calmly considering what happened and considering I was watching. It's not like he was sliding towards a cliff, but like you've been down that way, like it's steep.
Yeah,
like he could have fallen. He could have fallen. There's no soft landing spot really over there. So after that, he ended up putting his K10s on. My spikes were still kind of suiting me okay, and I just was trying to be very conscious of the sections. Needless to say, I walked around that section. I didn't even mess with it. I was like, I'm not even going to go.
You let him go first?
I just rocked.
What a good hiking buddy.
Yeah. Let him test it. No, but it was kind of, I don't think either of us looking at it thought it was going to be that bad to get down. And it might even been a little that factor of like, even though it was cold out, like the sun was kind of putting a thin layer of water on top of the ice. So it was just tough to get a grip into. And, we made it down. We were kind of slow going, crossed another guy that was from New Hampshire on the way down that kind of we ended up hiking out with for like the last hour or so. It was pretty cool. But yeah, so it was kind of special too, because that actually made halfway through my winter 48. So that was number 23 and 24 for Lincoln and Lafayette.
Give us the stats. Give us the stats for those.
So
guys.
that one's 8.9 miles to do the loop and 3,900 feet of gain. It's a strenuous hike. I mean, Josh can attest to it. It's not like I'd say that the Northern Presidentials and a lot of the trails around the like Washington and stuff are more strenuous. Like there's more strenuous places in the Whites, but it's up there in that top 25% or top 30% of difficult hikes.
Yeah. Up. I didn't have a problem with up. It was down that was like killer on my knees.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny how it affects different people different ways. Usually down, I'm like pretty good.
Yeah. Down, I was like, these weak ankles ain't going to support me.
Yeah. And to be fair with you,
I can climb with my hands and stuff like that if I got to, but down, it's like I got these weak ankles. I got to hold my whole body weight as I step down onto this teetering rock.
Well, I felt bad too because you guys didn't you have like trail runner shoes on or something like that? Or not, they weren't trail runners. They were like from that Spartan race you guys had done. I forget what kind of shoes they were.
Yeah, they were like, oh man, what was that brand? Yeah, but they were basically trail running shoes.
But I think they got like shredded that day, basically.
Yeah, they were done.
I don't think they didn't have as good grip as like actual boots have, so I kind of felt bad when we were going down. But you guys made it fine.
Solomons.
Yeah, they were like funky though, and I mean, again, this is going back another 5 or 6 years with the technology of trail runners and stuff. So I think things have even just gotten a lot better since then.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was cool. So we really didn't waste any time in winter since it was like, I think at night on the solstice, like maybe 9 p.m. or something on the 21st. I forget, 8 p.m., 9 p.m. And pretty much on the 22nd, we were out there getting the winter peaks out. So it was a cool way to start off and a good way to kick off the sort of the Christmas weekend break.
Yeah.
So that was a lot of fun. And I did want to mention too, that time we did Franconia Ridge with you back in 2017 was like literally one of the nicest hiking days. Like when I was talking about you were like, oh, what's your favorite time of year to hike? Like days like that are perfect. Yeah. That day was like 65 on the ridge or 60 degrees and beautiful. Sunny and dry and breezy. And it was Bluebird Day. Perfect.
Not a cloud in sight.
Yeah. No, it was a fun time. I think it rained the rest of the weekend too, now that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah.
But
and I spanked you in beer pong.
You did spank me in beer pong. I remember we played for like 2 or 3 hours and you just kept beating me. And it was really demoralizing. Now I don't play you in beer pong anymore.
It's not worth it.
Not that we were drinking beer pong. We were just playing beer pong and drinking beer. I don't know if that made sense. Yeah, man. So Christmas, New Year's kind of came and went. Didn't really get out too much, but we did plan for the week of New Year's to go back up to New Hampshire and stay in Littleton. And kind of was debating what I wanted to do for Winter Peaks on this one. Like being halfway through the list, obviously I had plenty of choices, but I kind of wanted to do somewhere that wasn't super far away since Ash was kind of just hanging out with Ryland. I didn't want to be like gone like all day. So I ended up opting to do the Kinsmans. North and South Kinsman are 2 of the 48. For me, they're super special peaks because we actually started our 4,000 footers doing North Kinsman, and then we opted to finish on South. We actually intended to do North and South on our first hike when we did North Kinsman, but there were thunderstorms and we didn't have enough water and we turned around. So,
the joys of just starting off.
Yeah, it was like an 85-degree day in August. I think we each had like a liter Camelback or whatever.
This one Polar Spring bottle ought to do it.
Yeah. It does remind me that anytime like anybody is ever super critical of people being new, like was doing everything wrong. Like the amount of the gear we had, the clothing we had, like everything. I mean, we weren't like we didn't have like nothing on us. Like we were well packed as far as layers and stuff, but just like khaki shorts and like a cotton shirt and didn't have enough water. Didn't have bug spray.
It brought up a question that I had. How do you keep your water from freezing, like when you're doing these like frigid winter hikes?
So that's a very good question, and I actually had something happen that I hadn't really had happen too many times on the Kinsman's hike, which was, so just to take a step back, the day that I did it was the Thursday after, or rather Friday after New Year's, and there was a super cold front moving through that night and sort of those days right previous. And I was looking at the observatory forecast in the morning. Like I knew it was going to be a cold day. I just knew that from looking and watching the weather that week. But the observatory in the morning, and again, this is Mount Washington, which is like 2,000 feet higher than the Kinsmans, but it's still worth noting that their day forecast was basically like, I think it was highs up to like -5 or 0 degrees. So that's the high temperature for the day.
Holy
and the
crap.
And the wind chill was actually in the morning was -30 to -40 degrees Fahrenheit and rising to -20 to -30 degrees Fahrenheit throughout the day.
Yeah,
so like ridiculous. The warmest it was supposed to get on Washington that day was like around 0 and with like a -30 degree wind chill or something like that.
That's insane.
So I was looking at that and I'm like, the Kinsmans aren't, I knew that they weren't super exposed. North Kinsman kind of has one little lookout area, but the main summit's actually wooded. and the lookout area faces east, so it was actually on the opposite side of the wind. And then South Kinsman's open, so I kind of figured I was going to get a little bit blasted there. But again, it's not like you're on Mount Adams or one of these super craggy peaks that's totally exposed. Like they're kind of just peeking out. They're both, I don't know, like 4,200, 4,400 feet, something like that. They're not one of the taller peaks. It's not like Franconia Ridge where you're super exposed a lot of the hike. So I figured in the least I would go up to sort of where I could get to Kinsman Ridge and kind of peek out and get prepared and see what it felt like. And just I was very much prepared mentally to turn back if I felt uncomfortable at any point.
Yeah.
And I ended up going up the Mount Kinsman trail side, which is from the west, and did Bald Peak, which I got awesome views from. The Kinsmans I did not get awesome views from once I got up there. It was kind of a snow cloud hanging out, but Bald Peak is fantastic. That's a good one. I would do that with like Rylan on my back kind of hike. Like it was pretty easy. Nothing too crazy, and just outstanding views looking like west towards Vermont, and you could see like Cannon and sort of the Kinsmans and stuff. So that was really cool. But nice. To take it back to the water comment and question, by the time I got down, I knew my water was freezing up a bit, but I'd say about a third of each of my 1 liter Nalgene bottles slushed up completely on me. And I actually use neoprene sleeves, so like the same material like wetsuits or things like that.
Yeah.
And wrap around my bottles, and even with that on them, and one was actually inside my backpack. It wasn't even outside my backpack because I had my tripod in one for my camera and then my liter bottle in the other one. But yeah, I had neoprene on both them, and they still both slushed up like pretty bad. I've only had that happen to me once before, and that was when I did Pearson Eisenhower a couple of years ago, and it was probably about almost equally as cold wind chill, but it was a lot more exposed. I'd say to date that was my coldest hike that I've done. I think that was January 2022. Yeah, January 2022. But similar, like a high of 0 or 5 degrees and very cold wind chill. So it slushed up my stuff, but I ended up doing a different thing on Owl's Head, which was the next hike. So Kinsman's 25-26 or 25-26 to recap it. There wasn't else too mentionable on that hike. I mean, it was cool to get back there because I hadn't been back to South Kinsman since 2019. So it was kind of cool to just get back to where I finished my 48 again. And I saw like 2 people all day. It was pretty remote.
Only you guys out there hiking in negative 30 degree wind chill.
Yeah, and I mean, on the Kinsmans, to be fair, it was like negative 18 or negative 20. So I would say only it was just balmy sunshine, but I did not really.
Nice
I was filming, but I kept moving pretty much most of the day. I sat and hung out on North Kinsman after getting to South for maybe like 15-ish minutes, and just kind of ate some food and water and stuff, and was able to hunker down out of the wind to stay warm. But it was quite cold, quite cold.
Yeah,
quite cold.
How many layers? How many layers that day?
So most of the time when I was actually hiking up, I just have insulated winter pants, and then I have a 250 gram Smartwool base layer shirt, and then I wear like an Arc'teryx like fleece sort of material vest. I'm not sure exactly what the material is on it, and then like a hat and gloves. And kind of if I was stopping it, I think when I got to Bald Peak, I ended up putting on like a puffy that I have, so like a puffy jacket kind of deal with down in it. And then kind of thicker gloves. Once I usually start to get colder, like I instinctively put hand warmers and mittens, and I just leave them in there. And if my hands ever get cold, I just keep them on the back of my pack so I can just throw those on over my liner gloves or whatever. They're big enough that I can kind of have fingered gloves on and just throw them on over that. Yeah. So and then once I got to tree line that day, I like fully changed my hat into a dry hat, changed my gloves. I've kind of gotten better at doing that, so I'm not in my sweaty hat and gloves that I was wearing hiking up. And threw on actually a dry fleece vest that I had, and then a Gore-Tex like hard shell Arc'teryx jacket over that. And then I actually had my baklava, which is the thing that wraps around your head and just like your eyes are exposed. Yeah. And I had goggles on my head as well. I didn't actually really need the goggles. I ended up taking them off because it wasn't really that windy or snowy. And then I had a Smartwool hat on top of the baklava and everything and the hood. So I was very bundled up.
Yeah, that's a lot of bundle.
Yeah, I was quite bundled up. But yeah, so my water froze up, and what I started doing on the couple hikes after that is I actually, which is just like an old school thing, but just wrap an old wool sock around what I already had with the neoprene bottles. And I did that on Owl's Head, which is coming up soon in our discussion. And I was out there for like 8 or 9 hours, and it was not as cold as the Kinsmans, but my water was fine. It wasn't even frosted at all. So
the wool sock.
Yeah,
So for all you listeners, the wool sock around the water bottle, that'll do the trick. Did you do the neoprene and the wool sock?
Yeah, I did both.
Oh, okay.
And people use different things. Like I've used insulated bottles too before, like just metal insulated ones. I don't know if there's air insulation in them or whatever, but they're just heavy, which is kind of awkward. So I'm not like a huge fan of that because you're already carrying enough crap, frankly, in the winter on your back. So it's just plain Nalgene bottles. But again, I never really had problems with it until that's like one of the first times I've had it slush up that bad. Yeah. So it was pretty impressive. It would have been an issue if I needed water later in the day for sure, which I was very conscious of. I figured that would have been a thing.
I figured that would have been an issue.
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, the Kinsmans were cool. Like I was saying, good to get back there, kind of dancing around, I guess.
Yeah. What's the stat on those?
So the Kinsmans were 10 miles and 3,950 feet of gain. So right around 4,000 and 10 miles. And that's another like out. You pretty much go up from the Mount Kinsman Trail and then you hit Kinsman Ridge and you go over North Kinsman to South Kinsman and then just back. So a couple up and downs. And then Bald Peak was maybe like 2 miles in up the Mount Kinsman Trail. If anybody out there just wants to hit Bald Peak. I actually heard discussions that might be getting added to the New Hampshire 52 with the view list. You didn't hear it from me.
Oh, you got some insider tips.
No, someone was joking with me. Someone was joking with me that it should be on that list, and I would totally agree with it. But it's like also there's probably so many of those peaks in New Hampshire that just aren't on any list, but have fantastic views because there's just mountains and ledges everywhere. But it easily could be on the 52 view list. It was fantastic.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, man.
I thought you had an inside scoop that you were going to share with us.
No, not really. Not really.
A little peek behind the curtain.
Yeah. So the next day, wanted to hike with Ash and Rylan and stuff, and it was not as cold as the previous day. So like before, everybody's like, "Why are you taking your toddler out in negative 20-degree wind chills?" This was up on top of the mountains. I was talking about the weather that previous day. So in the valley and down low, it wasn't nearly as bad. I did feel like I missed out on views from the Kinsmans, so we were in bed pretty early that night, and I kind of got up earlier and decided I was going to do Cannon. And Cannon has a couple different routes you can do, but I kind of like this one, even though it's short and steep and some people don't enjoy it as much. But Cannon from the Kinsman Ridge Trail, which is essentially near the Trim parking lot at Cannon, it's 4.4 miles and 2,250 feet round trip. So the nice side of that hike is it's super short and it gets you right up to Cannon Mountain, which is good. And Cannon's not like huge. It's like, I think it's just over 4,100 feet or something. It's got the nice observation tower on top of it that you can see. But yeah, like part of that trail, I think the first like mile and a half goes up like 1,800 feet or something. So it's very steep. It goes up pretty clearly. Yeah. I kind of was in the mode, like I just wanted to get up there, snap some pictures. So I actually just put on some music, which I don't normally do while I'm hiking, like almost like I was running or something, but made it to the summit in like an hour, which I felt pretty good about. I was just kind of rocking and rolling. And awesome views from Cannon. Made up for the previous day.
You carried Rylan?
No, I didn't do Rylan on this one yet. I think I buried the lead on that one. I got out early so that I could get out hiking later with Ash and Rylan. There you go. Thank you for taking it back.
Yeah, we needed to clarify that Nick needed to hike twice in one day. All right, thank you. Yeah, thank you for that.
just because Nick could hike and Nick needed to get views.
Yeah,
those calendars don't make themselves, Josh.
Those
calendar pictures don't make themselves.
No, they don't. Of course they don't.
Yeah.
Listen, it's okay.
I had the itch.
You have a problem.
and I'm just making
Honey,
you
where are you
acknowledge
going? It's 3:00 in the morning. I gotta chase this high.
Facts. I'm not even denying it.
Oh man.
So yeah, top of Cannon was beautiful. It was funny. Like I was up there, and there were a couple other photographers that took the tram up. And I was talking to them, and like all three of us were waiting for like the clouds to clear from Franconia Ridge, which like never fully happened. Like I was waiting up there for like 30 minutes, and like I was like, I need to go down, but I really want to wait. Like it kept looking so clear, like Lincoln and Lafayette. They'd like separately clear out, but not the entire ridge. I could see the Kinsmans behind me and a bunch of other peaks, which was cool. But I was like waiting to get that money shot of Franconia Ridge. I still ended up with some great shots. On the way down, I went by the Cannon Cliffs Lookout, which is kind of on top of where the Old Man actually used to be, from what I understand. But Franconia Ridge is just like, bam, like right in front of you. So that might be coming to a calendar near you next year.
Near you.
I'm excited to share some more of those. But
sweet.
Yeah, short, steep, and sweet, that hike. And it was also very icy in spots. I think I failed to also mention how icy the Kinsmans were the day before. Like I was literally swearing out loud in the woods by myself every time I was slipping on like snow or whatever, covering ice. It was just difficult to find, but Cannon was icy, not as bad. Kind of slow going down. So that was cool. That wasn't a new winter peak for me. I've been up there in the winter before and been up there in the summer, but it counts for my January grid if I become an official gridder in New Hampshire. So that'll be cool.
You just needed something to do.
Yeah.
It was just something to do.
So after hike number 1 that day, we were kind of looking at the weather, and it looked pretty nice. Like, it was kind of almost looking like it was going to snow, but the temperatures weren't too bad. So we're like, it'll be fine to take Rylan out. And we decided to go to the Flume Gorge in Franconia Notch. And while the official attraction of the Flume Gorge is like closed in the summer, you can go there in the winter and walk around the trails and see you can get up to the entrance of the the giant gourd.
There's a giant gourd in those woods.
Like, I need to go home. I need to go home now.
It's just some giant naked dude named Gordon. There's a giant gourd in those woods.
The giant gourd. Anyways, you can go to the gorge even in the winter, and you can see avalanche falls at the top of the gorge, and you can go to the front of the gorge and kind of look in there. You can't get into where the actual boardwalk is in the summer, understandably, because it's icy, and they probably don't want to be liable for that. And I'm also assuming
you keep saying summer, but I think you mean winter.
Oh, in the summer you can go to the. Oh, yeah. Did I say so summer instead?
Yeah, you can't go there in the winter. You're saying.
No, you can't go there in the winter. Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
Can't go there in the winter. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah,
I think I was saying the opposite way. Yeah, so they rip up all that stuff in the winter, but you can still go there. So we had her on my back, and that was one of the first times I think Ash has taken her in the Osprey pack. So she was doing well, but she's like, "Wow, like Rylan's pretty heavy." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know."
Yeah,
I've done it a few times.
I've been pack muling her for months now.
Yeah, and we kind of ended up splitting it where Ash took her almost up to where the falls were, and then I kind of took over and kind of took her down. But she stayed like nice and toasty. We actually put some hand warmers like around her like core pockets and stuff, so she was more than warm enough, and she seemed to really enjoy it. So that was kind of cool. I know she won't remember it at all, but I'll be like, "That's your first time you went to the Flume Gorge."
Let me just say,
mommy and daddy's backs.
Hiking with a baby on your back is hard, like very hard. Like, I did Mount Willard with Jeremiah on my back that day, and I thought I was gonna die. Like, it was like. It was just too. It's just too much. Like, it's too much.
Yeah, it takes some getting used to. I mean, the Osprey pack we have, I think, does a good job of distributing her weight, but she's heavy. Like, she's definitely over 20 pounds now. So you just gained an automatic 20 pounds. Yeah,
like, and it's not even like distributed evenly. It's all up top. So you're just super top heavy. Yeah,
even with a hip belt and stuff, it still kind of feels weird. Like, there's times where like I'll go to like hop or something, and like you can feel it like pull you back. You're like, oh, I'm going backwards. Yeah, and it got some nice shots of Ash and Rylan too, so that was cool, and just took a bunch more pictures. But we hung out there, and we still had some daylight to kill, if you will, before we wanted to kind of head back to the house for the night and stuff and go out to dinner. So we ended up going up Artist Bluff, which, have we done Artist Bluff? Have you done it?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay. I feel like I've just done that with everybody, but maybe not. We'll get up there eventually. Jeremiah could definitely do that now.
Oh yeah, probably.
Yeah. That hike's actually across from the Cannon ski area, and it's a super popular hike for good reason. It's very short, and it takes you out to this bluff, Artist Bluff, that looks down like Franconia Notch basically from a southern direction. So you can see like Franconia Ridge and Cannon, and like just it's super scenic and pretty. And we got up there, and the wind was like howling. It really kicked up from even where we were before. And as it always seems like when you drive up into that area, Franconia Notch, it must be a little higher, just the weather, but it's always like 3 or 4 degrees colder than it is around Lincoln and like the Flume Gorge. It was like, instead of being like 30, it was like 23 or 25, and the wind really kicked up. Like, it seemed like as soon as we got to the top of Artist Bluff, and like I'm like, we're not staying up here with Rylan that long. I snapped some quick pictures, and we literally went right back down. Unfortunately, we wanted to hang out up there and stuff. We brought some snacks and whatnot, but it just wasn't gonna happen. Gonna happen. And she was being a super good sport. She never cried or anything, and she seemed like she was genuinely excited.
She was frozen solid.
Babies can't cry when they're frozen.
No tears.
Yeah.
The tear ducts were sealed shut.
They just evaporated because the air was so cold and dry.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was a lot of fun. It was good to get out with her and Ash, and yeah, she seems like as long as we're moving when we're hiking and stuff, she really enjoyed.
Yeah.
It was cool to see her like looking around at everything, and she's getting a lot more conscious, like too, at that age of like what's going on around her. So
yeah,
I feel like I took her to watch Yusa the first time, and she kind of was just looking at dogs, and now she's like looking at like everything. She was like, if we saw the waterfall, and she was like, oh, she did her oh wow thing. She was like, oh wow, waterfall.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was cool, man. All right. Any questions about any of those, or
no?
Not much. All right.
You can keep it rolling. You're on a roll, kid. Are we at the last one? We're at the last one.
We're at the last one.
But this is a good one.
Yeah, this is the one you're waiting for.
I've been waiting for this one.
So I'd actually reached out, not reached out, but chatted a little bit with Mike from the Slasher podcast back when they were at the 5K around Veterans Day. It was like the Lakes Valley Region Search and Rescue 5K that they had did, the Rescue Me 5K that me and Ash did.
Yes.
Which we talked about on previous episodes.
Yep.
But he was mentioning he still needed Owl's Head for his winter 48, so he's like, I'm trying to get a group together, and I kind of kept in touch with him and reached out, and eventually he was kind of settled on the weekend. I'm gonna look at the date really quick. It was a couple weekends back.
Was it Martin Luther King?
No, it was the day. It was the day before Martin Luther King Day. But yeah, we'll just say the Sunday Martin Luther King weekend. I forget what date exactly it was. You can look it up if anybody's so inclined to look at the date. Or do you have the little calendar thing underneath you?
I got a calendar.
And the Kinsman hike was January 5th. Cannon was January 6th.
Yeah, and that would have been the 14th.
The 14th. So he was looking at the weekend of the 14th to get out with some people to do Owl's Head, and weather ended up looking okay. We were kind of, we had another freaking rainstorm, so we were watching to see how much rain versus snow New Hampshire got, and he was watching levels of the east branch of the Pemigewasset River to see if water crossings were going to potentially be an issue. And why we were looking at that before we decided what day to hike is because Owl's Head it's kind of notorious with the White Mountains and the 48. It's usually one people save to the end, even when they do the normal 48, because it's a long haul. The summer route's actually 18 miles round trip, and it's approximately 2,900 feet of elevation gain.
Yeah.
So it's in the middle of the Pemigewasset Wilderness. It pretty much sits between. It's to the west is Franconia Ridge, to sort of your north is like the South Twin Gale Head area, and then to the east you have the Bonds and Bond Cliff and stuff. So it kind of just sits kind of remotely by itself. And it's a peak that's barely over 4,000 feet. Most of the hike's super flat. And then you get to the base of Owl's Head where you ascend 1,500 feet or so, or maybe a little bit more, pretty steeply to get to the summit of Owl's Head.
Wow.
So a lot of it's just walking through the woods. That's
significant.
Yeah.
So how far from that point to the top is it? It's 1,500 feet up of elevation. Like a mile or so, I think. Oh,
it might be maybe 2 miles. It goes up pretty quickly. So that's the normal summer route. You go from I think you go out the Lincoln Woods Trail, and then eventually I think you hit Lincoln Brook or Franconia Brook, and eventually you kind of basically hit the base of the Owl's Head Slide, which is actually an unofficially maintained trail. It's technically a bushwhack, but it's well trodden. They call it a herd path at this point. You can go up, but you go up the Owl's Head Slide and you go up to the summit. In the winter, it changes a little bit in that most people use the Black Pond bushwhack, which goes out by Black Pond Trail and then connects you back to the I believe it's the Franconia Brook or the Lincoln Brook Trail, and from there you kind of catch the normal trail out to Owl's Head, and you actually go up. You can go up the slide in the winter. Some people do it, but most people opt to do the Brutus bushwhack, which is what we did. And that actually starts off and branches off the trail before you hit the slide. And while it's a bushwhack, it's pretty well trodden. Mike and I think a few other people in our group had basically a GPS track or GPX file that we could follow. So we kind of had a rough guide of where we were going. We actually lost the Black Pond bushwhack for a little bit on the way out and got back to it. And then the Brutus bushwhack, we picked it up right away where it was. But there was one section where I think we could have kept going left, and we actually ended up going up straight to the summit. But there was a pretty clear herd path in the snow to get to the summit. But it was pretty strenuous trail breaking going up Brutus Bushwhack. There was another Mike in front of us.
Oh, you guys had to break the trail?
Yeah, so it was pretty wild. Again, like with the snowfall this year, that hasn't been a lot. We actually most of us bare booted almost to the base of the slide. So like we all had our snowshoes and micro spikes and everything on us. But most of us didn't actually use any traction until we got to the slide, to the base of Owl's Head, and the base of the Brutus Bushwhack.
I don't know if you said this. I might have missed it. How many people did you end up going with?
Yeah, I didn't mention that yet. I think I hopped over that because I'm just diving into it. But we had, let's see, I think we had 6 of us because we had like Mike, Peter, Jake, and me, and I think and Steve. So yeah, we had 6 people.
6, yeah.
6 people with us. So we had a pretty good crew of people. And everybody was strong hikers too.
That's good.
Especially Mike K, who was breaking trail up Brutus Bushwhack like a good amount of the way. He was definitely chugging along.
Wow.
So we had a group, but with snowshoes and when you are breaking trail, it's good to have people to help pack it down behind you and whatnot.
Right.
So we headed up the Brutus Bushwhack. I actually had to readjust my snowshoe because I realized the last time I used them was when I was doing Chikura and Middle Sister in November, and I was wearing smaller boots, so that's why my boots weren't fitting quite correctly. So had to readjust a little bit. We all ended up kind of chugging up, and even though the Brutus Bushwhack isn't probably as gnarly as going up the Owl's Head slide, especially with the prospect of ice and stuff, we still, you go up like that same amount of gain. I was talking like 1,500 feet, 1,800 feet or whatever in like a pretty short span, like a mile and a half or whatever. So it basically goes straight up for quite a while until you kind of pop out onto the even summit of Owl's Head.
Yeah. I guess a question that I have for you is, so obviously you met Mike at that 5K, and you knew him from the Slasher podcast and all that. But like for somebody who doesn't have that kind of people, because I think we talked about it before, right? Hiking during the winter, especially tougher hikes, you want to go with a group of people, right? But
yes.
For somebody that doesn't,
for sure,
isn't connected to people like that, like what's a good way for people like that to like find people to hike with?
So probably your best bet is to reach out on Facebook. I know I'm assuming they have a website by this point, but there's actually like a hiking buddies group in New Hampshire that facilitates a lot of different events and stuff like that and group hikes. And I think they have like people officially certified to like lead group hikes, and they're probably like trained for first wilderness response and medical stuff and things like that. I don't know exactly what you have to go through to qualify, but there's a number of groups where you can kind of reach out and find your people, if you will, or find the people that want to go out and hike in the winter with you. If you can't find anybody else to hike with.
Facebook, Craigslist, I'd say.
Don't
perhaps
Craigslist.
Bumble.
Need snowshoes. Yeah, the Bumble. There you go. But yeah, if you're looking for people, I think that's probably the best thing to find. That's one of the things too, where when you do read, I mean, Instagram's all pictures and stuff, but a lot of times you do end up finding certain people that have similar interests, which can be kind of cool sometimes.
Right.
A couple of the people we were hiking with, even on that Sunday, like I definitely was already following them on Instagram, which is kind of funny. Like meet people in person that you've seen and like followed on Instagram because they're into hiking and they like your pictures and you like their pictures or whatever, which was cool. But it was just kind of funny. Do
they listen to the PUDs podcast?
I don't know. Maybe a couple of them might.
They better.
I don't know.
No shout outs for any of those people anymore.
Well, their names got mentioned briefly.
No more mentions. No, I'm just kidding. No, it's nice. It's nice that you have especially this time of year, you have a group of people that now you've done it once. Now you can probably do it again with these people on different trails and things like that. It's nice to have a group that you can be able to do that with.
Yeah, for sure, especially for some of the longer hikes, and even like Mike Trokey at this point too, where we actually are tentatively planning on going to hike this weekend, which I won't get into that now about our plans. I'll save it for a later date. But
save it.
Yeah, it's just good to have some other people that want to go out and do the long hikes and stuff at this point. Nice. So it's been cool. Owl's Head is definitely not one I wanted to do by myself. So I did mention the summer out's 18 miles, but with the Black Pond Bushwhack and the Brutus Bushwhack in the winter, it shortens it to to a mere 16.2 miles. So it's still a ways.
Yeah. That's a light jog.
A light jog. And a good amount of that's flat and monotonous. So that's kind of probably why it gets a bad rep. But yeah, we're going up to the summit, Brutus Bushwhack, and this is probably the part that Josh wants to hear about. So I don't know if I could do this again if I tried, but I've always, and perhaps naively, just strapped my micro spikes to my backpack with just like a carabiner, and I just let them hang there kind of on the top of my pack. And I actually caught a branch on my snowshoe near the summit, in between. So there's an old summit of Owl's Head and a new one. This was just like an elevation thing they found, I think, in 2005. But anyways, we're going from the old one to the new summit. And I'm crossing through the woods, and my snowshoe catches a tree branch on the ground. And I like kind of lean down to go pick it up, and I end up tripping and falling like basically face first in the snow. And at some point during that time, when I actually got caught on the branch and leaned over, my micro spikes slingshotted around my backpack and actually whacked me in the forehead. So I had Mike K behind me, and I think Jake, and I was like, man, that like felt pretty good. And then I'm looking, I'm like, am I bleeding? And he's like, oh yeah, you're bleeding. And I was like, fantastic. So it wasn't so much like it hit me so hard that it whacked it open, but I think it's just because of the spikes and because my skin was sweaty and wet. It just like gave me like a clean slice right across like the top of my my left eyebrow. So that was fun. So
you got spiked. You spiked yourself.
I got spikes. Wow. You gotta watch out. You gotta watch out for killer micro spikes. Yeah, it was pretty crazy.
Don't hang them where they can slingshot into your face.
Yeah, and I've never had that happen before, like ever. Not that I've hiked. I mean, there's people that have hiked way more than I have, but it's not like I haven't hiked with them like that before, and I've never had that happen. Yeah, it was kind of wild.
Do that again if you wanted to.
Yeah, it was interesting. So again, thanks to Jake, who had a Band-Aid from something or another hike, I guess, where he had cut his hand open, so he just had a Band-Aid like handy in like his like hip pouch or something. So he gave me a Band-Aid, and I kind of like looked and slapped that on right away. And like I think I just took like my sweaty hat or whatever and changed my hat and like wiped like the blood off and stuff. It looked like, I felt like initially I was looking at my hand and it looked worse than it was because I was all sweaty and stuff. So I was like looking, and like my entire hand was like partially red, and I'm like, oh shit. Not like covered, but it didn't look fantastic. It's not ideal when you're hiking, when you're on the top of Owl's Head in the middle of January. Yeah. It's not the ideal situation. So kind of wiped it down. Everybody else
is like, who the hell invited this guy?
Yeah. My first hike out with this group, and they're all gonna be like, it's this this crazy.
They call you Spike now.
That'd be a fantastic trail name. Give people any ideas. That'd be a fantastic trail name.
Hey,
I'd accept that.
Hey. That's a good idea for for Mike. He can start calling you that. He can start calling you Spike.
Spike. It's too funny. Yeah, man. So yeah, that was interesting. And once that got taken care of and I got patched up, this very, very small Band-Aid, we went to Owl's Head, ate some food quick, and pretty much made our way out. And it was very interesting coming down the Brutus Bushwhack again. It was in some steep snow, and like with the awkward weather we've had this year that I feel like I keep coming back to, but it's just really affecting conditions. The snow was almost like powdery with like an ice layer beneath it. So it's like you almost crunch through, and then we're like sliding down, and there's like chunks of ice like sliding down sort of the trail. Not like deadly large ones, but just making a mess. We're like half butt sliding and half, almost felt like I was skiing on my snowshoes in part in powder because you're just kind of leaning back into it. So that was fun. And we used our snowshoes until we got, I think, back to almost the Black Pond Bushwhack. I know some people kept them on all day, but I took mine off and just put spikes on again. And there was a snow squall that moved in like maybe the last hour we were on the trail, and it must have snowed like an inch or two just in the parking lot.
Wow!
While we were out, like it started dumping snow. By that evening, it was like clear. It was not clear again, but certainly not snowing like it was. But it was one of those squalls that came through and just dumped like a couple inches of snow on the road, all the way up to the Kankamangas Highway and stuff. So I was like literally, I swear I had my trunk open for like 30 seconds to throw my backpack in. And there was like half an inch of snow in it when I was unpacking. When I was packing the next day, I was like, how is there this much snow in it?
That's funny.
Just crazy, dude. So that was number 27 for my winter 48, and it was good to get Owl's Head out of the way too, because I feel like a lot of people save that late for their winter list. I think too. I was glad to find a crew to go out and kind of get it done, other than slashing myself in the face with a micro spike.
Yeah,
it was a good time. It was a good
slasher.
time.
You got slashed with the slasher.
Yeah, I did. So it was cool. Mike did a great job putting that hike together and organizing it. Kudos to him again.
Sweet.
Yeah, and stayed at Indian Head that night, which I'd never stayed at before, so that was kind of cool. It seems like a neat little family resort kind of.
Oh yeah, Indian
area.
Head. Yeah. I think
Yeah.
Melissa used to stay there when she was like a kid.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Probably. I'm sure a lot of people have, but it was like the cheapest room I could find other than the Kangamangas Lodge or like some places that like looked really tiny and not like clean. So I think it was like $100 or something like that. Shout out to Indian Head.
And all those other guys live in New Hampshire?
A couple of them did, or one of them had a house, kind of a mix, Massachusetts. I think most of them were in Mass and had driven up. We all I actually got to the trailhead earlier than I intended, but we like met up and wanted to start at like 7. So it was an early day. I think I left at like 3:15ish or something like that.
Where you going, honey? I gotta chase this high.
It's like, what's wrong with you? Where are you going? I'm going to do Owl's Head. Isn't that up in New Hampshire? Yes.
I'm gonna go meet up with 5 other guys and hike. It's 3:30 in the morning. I gotta chase this high. Damn it. Roll back over. Go to bed. That's funny. How do you find out like trail conditions before you go?
There's a website, newenglandtrailconditions.com, that people voluntarily post conditions on. Another one, Facebook. A lot of it are, I mean, you just end up asking around. We kind of figured with the recent snowstorm we had, while there wasn't a ton of snow, like it had freshly snowed, that it wasn't going to be broken out. And the Brutus bushwhack wasn't broken out at all, even though I think guys had been out there a few days before it had already snowed over their tracks. But it was kind of crazy that in the Pemmy Wilderness, which kind of is one of the areas of New Hampshire that gets like the Whites that gets the most snow, like there really wasn't a ton.
Nice.
So it was kind of crazy.
That's good. It would have been a lot tougher, I'm sure, with a couple feet of snow.
Oh God. Yeah. I mean, we made good time too. I think we were gone just around 8 hours or 8.5 hours, which for that distance and stuff, we weren't like crushing. We weren't like, I would say we were going super fast, but we definitely were going at a pretty good clip.
Nice.
If it was snowy, like it probably would have taken us a couple more hours easy. I bet if we had a couple feet of snow to break through. I mean, with that many guys, if there was so much snow, theoretically, you might not even make it to the summit if everybody got gassed out. If there was like say 3 feet of snow or something crazy like that.
Yeah. You said 16 miles, right?
Yeah. And that's that's the short way that people opt to take. A big reason why, I don't think I mentioned that either too, with the river crossings and everything else, but with the bushwhacks, it actually dodges like 3 of the big river crossings that you have to do on the normal route to Owl's Head. The way that me and Ash went, where we like ended up like drowned rats one of the times because it rained when we were doing it, and we had a whole thing that's on our previous episodes that we went into. But yeah, nobody wants to deal with those river crossings in the winter, so that's generally why you do the Black Pond bushwhack. Just dodges those out.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But yeah, man, slept really good that night. Woke up pretty early because I think I fell asleep at like 8:15 or 8:30, and I did Indian Head, or Mount Pemigewasset, which is right near Indian Head Resort. That's the namesake mountain of it. That's also a 52 of the view that I've done a bunch of times. But got up there quick, snapped some photos in the morning, talked with a dude that was presumably over 75 because he was saying he was working on doing his 48 over 75, which was pretty crazy. They give separate patches for like over 70, and I think some of the other ones are maybe there's a subset club that does it, but he's like, oh yeah, and he's like, once I hit 80, like I'm calling it. He's like, I have friends who are in their 80s trying to do them again. But I was like, good for you, dude. Yeah. And he actually,
hey guy,
in Small Worlds,
I've already called it. I'm already calling it.
Yeah.
This guy's 80. He's still doing it. I'm already all done.
No, I was like, good for you. And he was like, oh, congratulations on. I was telling him I was out of Owl's Head the day before, and I was like, oh, good luck on your endeavors. And it was kind of a Small World thing because he saw pictures I posted on Facebook afterwards of like Cannon, and ended up reaching out to me. And apparently he's the trail maintainer for the Mount Kinsman Trail that I hiked a couple weeks before. He actually maintains it up to like Kinsman Ridge Trail.
That's super cool.
Which is kind of neat.
You're connected. You're one of these people.
I don't think I'm one of the people.
No, you don't have to think you are. You are one of those people.
I'm sick.
Yeah, you're in their community. You're one of them.
Real sick.
That's all right, though. Man.
Yeah, and that's kind of a nice summary of the pre-winter and the winter hiking sort of thus far. Yeah, it's been a fun winter. I feel like every winter I get out a little bit more. I try to get out a couple times a month, even if it's day trips up there. I'm looking forward to more daylight. It's kind of nice when we start getting some more light. November, December to hike in like sucks. Like even when I got some nice sunrise pictures when we did Franconia Ridge on the 22nd of December, but yeah, it wasn't even like, it felt like it wasn't light out until like 8 o'clock. Like when we were hiking, it was just kind of get done with that kind of quick. And the sun was going down basically when we finished at like 4 o'clock or so.
Yeah. It's fun. It's fun for me to watch you experience this because I can see and tell how much joy, and like I said, I know I joke around and say you're chasing this high, but it's fun to see like how much you actually enjoy doing this and the preparation and everything that you put into it. It's cool. So
when you look at those photos on your calendar, just remember that I froze my nuts off on some of those to get those pictures.
It's not some random guy. It's you that took that picture. You had to physically go up there and do that.
Imagine if I had this conspiracy of like I actually didn't take those pictures and I actually just paid somebody that dressed up in like my clothing or something.
You fraud.
That'd be a lot of effort.
Yeah, don't get it.
Be a lot of effort.
Oh man.
No, man. Yeah, I enjoy doing it. Again, it's been cool. Like I've chatted on the podcast before, just getting kind of back into photography and doing those things. It's been neat. Yeah. And certainly recording the Kinsmans in that kind of temperature with my camera was a thing.
Yeah. Every time you go out too, I feel like you're getting better.
Thank you.
Your photography's getting better, so.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We called this a SPUDs, but this is no SPUDs.
Yeah.
This is
it's actually longer than it's like a more concentrated episode.
Yeah, it definitely.
I'm still gonna call it a SPUDs just because of the topical.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Not really. I don't think so. You get any other questions? Anything else? I'm sure this won't be the last hiking podcast we ever had. If you did enjoy this episode and you've kind of been looking at the topical ones, the me and Ash doing the 48 ones are out there in our older episode. You can hear our original journey of doing the 48. So
yeah, and you're gonna do a pack episode too, right? Talking about what you're putting in your pack.
Yeah, I'll make an effort to actually make that a shorter episode and make it kind of concise. But yeah, we're gonna do sort of an intro to like winter hiking gear one of these days. I know we're only a third of the way through the winter, so we still got plenty of time.
Yeah, plenty of time.
And it's not like the gear and what you use really changes that much. So yeah, we'll get that out at some point.
Looking forward to that.
Cool, man.
All right, man. Bippity boppity, give me the zoppity.
Bye. PUDs Podcast was produced and recorded in Black Cat Studios by the Pud Boys. Find us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you enjoyed, please consider leaving us a review and subscribing. Find us on social media, and we'll see you next time.